All right, welcome to Dave Cooper Live, where we feature the people, the product, and the process helping us all build it better. And today we are going to welcome Greg Ugalde back to the show. Greg is the past chair of the National Association of Home Builders, one of the largest trade associations in the United States, representing the interests of home builders, developers, contractors, and associated businesses, helping contractors across the nation succeed. And did you know, I bet you didn't, Greg is also president and chief legal officer at T&M Building Companies, a Connecticut-based builder in business for over 50 years. And he also the second vice president of the Central Connecticut Home Builders and Remodelers Association. Yes, he is an overachiever, this guy. So when we bring him on, let's give him a warm welcome and 2 thumbs up. Greg Ugalde, as he shares builder forecasts with us. We've been dealing with rising costs, shrinking labor, and now a recession. We're looking at higher interest rates, and what about the housing components of inflation? When housing affordability is already a challenge across the country and around the world, what does the Consumer Price Index have to say about the cost of shelter? We're talking about builders, the economy, and the threat of a recession. Is it improbable or inevitable? Let us know in the comments what you think. All right, but before we get started and break Greg onto the show, we have to thank our sponsors, Carson Holmquist and the team at Stream Logistics. They are experts in high-stake freights, and they're a perfect choice for projects with timelines and a specific delivery sequence, shipments with high complexity and unique constraints. The new methods of construction need new transportation solutions, and they are up for the challenge. To learn more, go to streamlogistics.com. Also, a big shout out to Paul Short and the team at CombiLift. They're the largest global manufacturer of multi-directional forklifts and straddle carriers. They are a leader in long load handling solutions with more than 50,000 CombiLift units have been sold in over 85 countries since 1998. CombiLift helps maximize the capacity, safety, and efficiency of your warehouse and storage facilities. Go to combilift.com to learn more. And Brett McPhail, Brave Control Solutions, where offsite manufacturing systems do more than just improve productivity. Their unique approach to industrialized construction includes a lineup of flexible automation systems for 3D volumetric assembly, structural insulated panels, finished wall assemblies, MEP component processing, assembly, kitting, and storage. To learn more, go to thinkbrave.com and tell them that Dave Cooper Live sent you there. All right. Without them, we cannot have guests like Greg on the show. So let's just hop right into it and bring Mr. Ugalde on Dave Cooper Live. Hey, Greg, how you doing?
Good. How are you today? Look at you all settled in Pittsburgh, and
Oh, I know. I mean, I'm all settled, awesome. A little disheveled, but we're trying.
No, it's great stuff. It's great stuff. You have a lot going on as always, but
we do.
Your shows are rolling out nicely, and you can tell by all the great sponsors and things that Dave Cooper Live is across the country and across the world. That's what's crazy, is how many different countries that you've been in over the past year or so.
Yeah, it is crazy, and we're heading back to Switzerland here in 3 weeks, so we'll be over in Switzerland again with about an influencer pool with millions of followers, so it's going to be a lot of fun. These are also big YouTubers and Facebook and all that, Instagrammers out there. So it's going to be a lot of fun. And as we work together, Greg, just like you come on the show, it's all about collaborating and putting the message out there. How do we build it better? How do we know what's going on? How do we protect our businesses? But also, how do we help people achieve housing affordability? And all of this is stuff we're going to talk about with you today. So, Greg, you are the past chair of the NAHB. Why don't you just give us 2 seconds of what you're up to these days? Because I've said it before. You're not just the chair of the NAHB. You've been a home builder for most of your adult life and in the legal side. So why don't you give people a quick update?
Yeah, so one of the things that, we have to look at in our industry and as home builders and developers is around the country. I mean, we're still getting the reports and gathering data. So, here we are up in New England, in Connecticut specifically for my company with my partner. we have to look at, what are we going to do with lots and land? How are we going to keep enough on the shelves to make sure that we can keep delivering product? There is demand out there. We have a housing shortage around the country, and we'll talk more about that as we get into the issues. But what we have to really do is work together to make sure that each state and each municipality can get to a point where we can offer housing options that people can afford and people can feel comfortable in. And that's a big part of what the home building industry has in front of them.
Yeah, it really is a big part of what's in front of us from all fronts. And I think let's just hop into this. I think the big question on the table that everybody's wondering about is, is it inevitable, improbable? Are we going to have a recession? What are you seeing at the NAHB? What are you hearing in Washington, D.C.? And even for your own business, what are you preparing for? Because it affects you just like it affects the rest of us.
So I think that when you look, home builders as a group tend to be pretty conservative, right? Because we have a lot at stake on a daily basis, and there's a lot riding, if you will. So not long ago, we had our mortgage roundtable starting with that process. So our chief economist, Dr. Rob Dietz, puts together financial information, all his economic data, and he presents it on an ongoing basis. He was one of the first ones that is seeing what we have as headwinds, where we're going in the economy, and he has us hunkering down for recessionary pressures in a recession in this country. Now, we're always the last group to put any kind of pessimistic wrinkle on things, because this is what happens. We go through these cycles and we have to brace for it. But there's recession in the air. Whether the numbers now, they're going to come out at the end of the week and into next week, what are they showing? We could already be technically in a recession. The trick here is going to be what we're going to see the Fed do, the legislature, but especially to the administration through the White House and the president. How are they going to deal with a lot of these conflicting pressures that we have? Because there's no question that with such high inflation and the workforce issues and everything else, that we're going to have battles in front of us. And to the builder, to our member, whether it's associate members or remodelers or people that are in the rental markets, we have to be careful and we have to hunker down, because there's definitely enough headwinds out there, and a recession is of some sort is on the way. So the question becomes, are we going to have a soft landing? Are we going to, all those, we don't have enough data to deal with that yet. But, if they're able to skirt through this lightly and at the last minute weave around it, but I think to be safe, you definitely have to look at, there's some real indicators out there that have us heading into a recession of some sort. Oh, I think you might be muted, Dave. I don't think it's me.
About that, can you hear me now, Greg?
Yeah, there we go. Good.
Great. I don't know what's going on my end technically here. We'll figure it out. But Greg, you mentioned one thing that I thought was super interesting, and that is we might already be in a recession, right? Builders, a lot of the time, the building industry is the last in and the last out.
Yes.
Is there anything out there that we can look at or feel, or do we still have to just kind of ride this out?
Well, see, it's interesting too, because the actual term recession is just dealing with strict, our economists are going to look, they're going to take the measurements, and they're going to look and say, okay, if you look at all these tells in this data, is either going to point 2 quarters in a row that we have enough that we are in a recession or not, right? But what we know at this point. And really what we're looking to do is help guide us through what we call headwinds. And there's plenty of those out there. And that's really what we're looking to do, because the actual term and how we come out of it, and, that affects Wall Street. It does, there's a lot of built-in pricing that goes into the stock market. But really what we're looking at is, what does the job market look like? Is money easy to access? Can we move forward? What does, are people still spending money freely? Are they saving money? All of those types of things get built into where we want to look if we're going to start selling homes and renting homes to people.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. So let's talk about some of the things that are still looming out there in a big way as well. We got inflation. We're seeing interest rates kick up. So let's talk about the inflation. What's happening with this? Do you see it getting worse? What is Michael, Dietz talking about in Washington? What should we be prepared for?
Yeah, so that's an area of concern. So, inflation readings accelerated in June again, right? So the CPI, the Consumer Price Index, increased 9.1% in June, which means that inflation is at a high level. So what happens is we have policies that can counter that, and normally you look at the Fed, who sets the interest rates, and that's their main tool to do this. So those go hand in hand, but it does not look like the increases that have been put in place. Last time it was 100 basis points. We've seen the increases. It looks like we are bulling the neck in a way and still seeing inflationary pressure. And that is something that's being looked at and monitored. So now next you have to consider what you do about that and the interest rates and so on.
And do you think that adjusting the interest rates up is going to help or hurt?
Well, it's funny how you just said that, you approach that question too, because what happens is that there's no question that the interest rates will help curb the inflation. So that's where the Fed has to look. So the question now is whether we're going to see the 75 basis points. That's what so you talk about Dr. Dietz, what's he showing? He's sticking with the 75 basis points right now. There is a lot of talk about whether they're going to do another 100 basis point increase, which means that is aggressive. But when you see 9.1%, the issue and the way you asked the question was right on, because by overshooting, you can take a lot of the good that we have in the economy, in the marketplace. We have demand, we have people, wages have been headed up. We have people very interested in buying and renting homes. All of that stuff starts getting curbed the more you start getting aggressive on interest rates. That's the balance that they have to try to strive for and come up with. So it does look like they're going to have to be very aggressive again here in July.
Yeah, and raise it. So, I mean, this all just seems to be compounding. It's almost like a perfect storm's building again. Do you see it being similar to the 08 recession? Any similarities other than the differences in the mortgages?
It is in a lot of ways, in that we probably will see aggressive attention to these areas. Mm-hmm. The biggest difference that we can see is that there is not a lot of product, there's not a lot of inventory out there. So in the past, what we had to overcome was the ability to get through the glut that was condo units, lots that were out there, and we needed prices to reflect a marketplace that we could absorb some of that back into the system. We need lots apartments and things right now. So that's completely different. And we expect that to really help the outcome. There's still some other headwinds out there too that are in the mix will still make it so that pins and needles is a good way to put it, right? Is we're looking and trying to decide what our next moves are.
Yeah, pins and needles really is a good way to put it. I know what the '08 was like, and it was not fun for the home building industry. And I also can talk firsthand experience in regards to product in the market. Moving out of the motorhome to rent our own place, we had to do it unseen from Florida because they would go in a day.
Yes.
So you had to make quick moves, and so I mean, the supply and demand was not out there. I'm still on the list. I was telling you earlier, I'm starting to see more stuff come through, but I'm not sure if that's just coincidence or not right now. So building material prices, this is another thing. This is something we've been fighting for the last couple of years, right? The prices have gone up. Are we going to see any end in sight? Are we going to be able to help reduce some of the costs of the inflation, of the interest rates? Is the building material prices ever going to come back down, or do you think this is the new norm?
So let's refresh everybody just quickly on the lumber, right? So the last big lumber increase we saw actually had over $18,000 easily to the price of homes around the country. In certain areas it was even much more than that. Now that's more of a commodity. So we will see the ability for the marketplace and futures trade lower. And so lumber will have the ability to adjust, come down, make it more reasonable to buy. A lot of the products had been held back for so long because of lumber, but because of just the costs. But we've really seen, nearly a 20% increase year over year on material costs. Right. So it's almost 19.5%. That's a lot of money that you're taking. I mean, for every $100,000 on a home, think about that. It's $19,500 you're adding, right? So, I mean, it's easy when you look at those numbers. If it's a $400,000 home, it's just under 80,000. So those are real numbers. So when you look at it that way, what we can hope for is that this market, the economic leveling off, let's call it, will also have prices level off. So the way Rob puts it, Dr. Dietz will say that, we're going to look toward stabilization first, so that we will continue to try to keep prices stable. That in itself is a huge victory, right? If you're a builder, if you're out there trying to figure out in price, if you know that you can count on prices rather than just trying to estimate how you're going to outrun them. As far as the cost coming down, we're still looking at, and you talk about this all the time, that's what's great about your show. DaveCooper.Live is consistently looking at better ways to do things. That's a big part, because the more competitive we can be, that's how we start driving costs down and bringing them down. But this, to simply think that with a little economic pressure and turmoil that we're going to see them jump down, let's look for stabilization and better ways to attack the cost and housing affordability. Dave, when I was chairman, and to this day, that's what we focus on a ton at NAHB and around the country in our industry.
Yeah, for sure. I got a question here from Jerry McCaughey. Let me read it to you, and then you can answer it. We got a couple other questions that are out there that we'll get to here in just a second. So it says, Dave, this is a question from Jerry on LinkedIn from Jennifer, but it's not coming through. So if there's nothing coming through and we don't see it, we apologize. But it says, does Greg have view on the average size of first-time buyer homes in U.S.? In other countries, average houses sizes can be less than 50% of the U.S., which obviously would lower costs and improve affordability.
That's a great question, Jerry. And that's what I like about, just as a quick, those types of observations help us in this country tremendously, because we have certain things that have happened in this country and they're not easy to overcome. One is the size of lots and the land we build on. So, Jerry, that's the first step. And you and I think, have talked even offline about this too, is that that's our difficulty. Is that when you start, usually you have a multiple of land being the cost of your home. So that if jurisdictions, municipalities and states are requiring larger lots than need be, you're forcing some added cost to the home, and it's usually a multiple of the land cost goes into the house cost in the end, because what we do is we adjust the size of the home to be able to cover the land cost. So what ends up happening is we're building far bigger homes than people need because we have to cover the cost of the land. So in this country, and depending on where you are, the closer you get in urban areas where you can have sewer and water, you can build smaller and you can get more on parcels of land. When you get out into urban areas and we start talking well and septic, and where we need more roads and infrastructure out there, they tend to get bigger because of the cost ratios. Yeah. And so there, and it's not really avoiding a particular answer, because we can drill down and get that average number. Sometimes the median number is even more accurate. But if we could drive that, let's just say that for my company, and I can answer it that way, we used to love building a 15,000 square foot home in under 1,500 square foot home and under, right? So we could, if we could get around 12, in detached I'm talking about, attached we could even do smaller, but 3,000 square feet is average in some areas in this country. I mean, that's a big home, right? And so between 2,000 and 3,000 square feet, that's where you see it in some of the rural areas. But if we could really build, like, when we grew up, we were living in raised ranches. What's wrong with 1,000 square feet, even 1,100? You see some downtown apartments, even in New York City or some of the countries, some of the cities around the world, and they're like sliding beds and kitchens and offices, and they're living in like a closet. And you don't have to get quite that small to answer Jerry's question, but we should be focused on that, because there's no, rhyme or reason. We actually focus a lot of our buyers in some of those areas. And we say, look at how big does your yard have to be? If you can have a garden, if you can have a catch with your kids, play catch, little baseball, some sporting areas, maybe at the end of your street, you have something larger. Let's control the building envelope and what we need for people to feel comfortable in. And that's the way we attack a lot of these issues that we have too around the world, and especially in the United States.
Well, let's get to some other questions. I appreciate that question, Jerry. I hope you are well. And Jerry, I think I owe you a phone call. Been in the middle of the mood. All right. Edgar Dearden says, isn't a recession the same as degrowth? Could we ever imagine a time when a recession is seen as a good thing? Follow up to this. Is it not crazy that our economy malfunctions every time we degrow? But degrowth has been shown as the most effective method of reducing emissions. Any thoughts on that? I'm not even sure where to go with that.
Oh, it's not a bad point, Edgar. I mean, that's, and if you talk about people in certain sectors, that's exactly a starting point for reducing emissions. When I went to the climate reduction conference in Glasgow, it was very interesting, because the first thing you saw was that the decision makers all came over in private planes, right? So that was quite a scene. But the absolute truth is that if you can control things, it's almost like a recession starts as, a reset button on a lot of these things. And if you start now correcting from those points, The difficulty is that you have to make sure that everybody's advised properly. That's why I like the way Dave presented the question at the beginning. What are we doing for our members? What are we doing for people in our industry? Be aware. I mean, there's concerns out there. It's not going to keep happening where there's 30 people building on a home. So all you do is set a price and let people start bidding it up from there. That's unrealistic to think that that's where we're going. So if we get to a point where everybody is looking and saying, okay, now we can consider some of these building science concepts that Mark and Dave talk about on Fridays, or how we can look at some controls. The issue is, from where we sit, is let's make sure, though, that we do look at the cost benefit analysis. In other words, that we do it in the most cost effective way, because what ends up happening is that we price a lot of people out of reasonable accommodations, and where are they if they can't afford to live somewhere?
Yeah, for sure. Carson Holmquist joining us from Stream Logistics. What's happening, Carson? We're excited to hear Greg's take on what the near future holds for construction. Stream is one of our sponsors, so
Thanks, Carson.
It's always cool when they tune in, because we can't have people like Greg on. I mean, to do these shows takes a lot of time and effort, and obviously it takes time for Greg and everybody else to come on. So good to see you. Denise from Stream as well. What's happening, Denise? I met all these awesome people out at some of the trade shows, and looking forward to seeing him at IBS again this year. That'll be fun too. We got Joe Butler in the house. Great topics. Dave and team consolidating outward pressure to specific business models in real estate will help release constraint tensions for sure. All right, we got a couple more topics here. I got a question, or comment, I should say, from Henry Mickelberg. I'll leave it as a wrap for the end, because I think it's appropriate for that. So let's get back to some of the topics here that we have not gotten to yet. So we talked about material prices. You take all of this and you still compound the labor shortages that we're dealing with. Like, what are we doing?
Yeah, so that's, one of the things that we look at, and I thought about this just as we were talking and you were asking about Dr. Dietz and Rob. One of the slides he has, which is kind of interesting, because the fact of the matter is we need about 450,000 jobs filled in our industry, and that's in our country. So, when you look around the world, it's even much higher. So to do that, we have things like our HBI and NHE and things that we're putting together curriculums at high schools and colleges, and we're trying to make sure that they're funded, and so we can start training people and bring them to our job sites. Here's the thing. So Rob has slides that show post-World War II male job participation in the job market, male participation in the job market since 1945. It's decreasing. So you're at like 69% right after the war, down to about 62%. Whereas women, on the other hand, the trajectory is just going the other way. They're starting at a much higher rate and hopping in. It's very exciting, because that's where we're going to be looking to start filling a lot of these job openings. But it is critical that we keep focusing, and through our Home Builders Institute, and getting the curriculums out there, but right, getting our young people seeing that there's a path into our industry, and that there are great opportunities out there. And then our National Housing Endowment helps fund those opportunities, and we do competitions and we have people coming in. But Dave, that's critical, because the cost of labor continues to shoot up as well. But the more trained young people that we can bring in, because we're aging out. We've talked about this on other shows. The
average, what do you mean we?
Plumbers and electricians, and not all of us can stay young forever. But it's true. We need a number of people, and it's a tough number that we have to conquer. But there's a lot of efforts on weekly and daily basis out there.
There is a lot of efforts. Let's talk about some of these efforts. Some of the efforts that the NAHB has done with letters to the White House. You just told us about 12,000 signatures that recently has gone to the White House.
Right. I just, and that's an example of what we can do, Dave, here is that, when members get called to action on these housing affordability issues, when we look at the Department of Housing, when we look at, the environmental issues, and we all need to be able to get together and work with the administration. A lot of times, especially in an election year like this, it's very tough to think that we're going to solve things legislatively. It's very tough. Always you can see the roadblocks that our Senate faces. But even in the House, the majority is so close, it's really tough to get anything meaningful cranking. So what we end up doing is we have to work and look at the other branch of the government, which is the president and his White House in the cabinet. And we have had good success now with setting up meetings and sitting down with Secretary Raimondo and just across the board saying, look, if we don't all hunker down and talk about the ways that we can address this economically and making housing affordable, we keep saying that on all topics, but the administration and the cabinet are a key way to do this. 12,000 signatures, picture them all. They get this thing and they look and they say, okay, this is something we better pay attention to. Look at all the people and all these businesses behind this effort. That's and right. We got a tremendous response, and we've had meetings from that, and we continue to schedule meetings.
12,000. Think about it. If you had to walk and knock on 12,000 doors, how much effort it takes, right? To get
That's
people
right.
to, really, you got to think about people stopping what they're doing and signing something. And it's just like going to the booths and voting. You got to do it. You got to put the information out there that, us as builders are, can help drive the path to, better laws, better regulations, better everything. If there's enough signatures for us to do it, they pay attention. Unfortunately, that's how it works.
And also, you look and you say, that's why Chairman Powell will quote us. Yeah. And, we'll look to see, okay, what influence, but they listen because they see. The other thing that we do, and we have to consistently provide accurate information that's right on point, because that's a key. That's what they want from us. That's what we can, as NAHB and our membership, that we can give them, because there's a lot of facts that need to be discussed out there. Right. And you can tell by the questions we're seeing today that people are really thinking these things through, especially when we go into some tougher times here.
Yeah, for sure. So we got two more questions I'm going to ask you about, Greg. And everybody out there, if you're liking what you're hearing today, please hit that like and share button. And if you're not a subscriber to the YouTube channel, please take a moment and do it. It does help us more than you would know. All right, Greg. So I know we were kind of danced around it a little bit. The Consumer Price Index and shelter component. What does this mean?
That is, so when you measure inflation, right, and you see what CPI is going to be, the Consumer Price Index, 40% of that is the housing rental component. They call it the shelter component. So, and sometimes that's delayed. That's what they're really concerned about too, just reporting those numbers. But that's why when you see inflation where it is, that there's such a concern, and for our members in our industry as well. So it's important that the lagging contributors like ours, the housing and rental piece, comes in and we start, seeing controls over that, but we're able to see some of that relaxing so that we don't keep having to deal with the Fed pushing interest rates up. There's only, right now you can still get a very affordable mortgage, especially compared to years ago, Dave, especially compared to the last time frame when you looked at these types of labor cost and increases that we saw with unemployment and with rising interest rates, we could keep all that under control. And that's what our goal is with this information and the way that we're trying to deal with it. We did see that our HMI, we call it, the housing market index that we do with Wells Fargo, went down 12 points, which is our second largest decrease since the beginning of COVID. So when and what that is, by the way, is taking the temperature of our members and saying, how do you guys feel? What are you doing as far as labor, as far as getting new land in your coffers and things? And people are looking at these indicators that we're talking about today and realizing that, you got to be cautious.
Yeah, for sure. All right, last question, or I guess last conversation, not even a question. A big turnout on the lawn of the mall outside the White House, the innovative housing showcase that just happened in Washington, D.C. I know Black Buffalo, a 3D printing company. I was speaking with Michael just the other day. He said that it actually ended up being amazing for them. They got to meet so many politicians, Secretary of Housing. And I know there was some short notice on getting this out, but the people that attended said it was absolutely nothing short of amazing, the connections and the opportunities that presented to them.
Exactly right. And, it gave us the chance because this was our second go around. So to be able to work with HUD and be able to take the resources that our government has, and then we're the ones actually that were able to put Paul Lopez and his team and Sean, they all put together an effort that was second to none because, it's very difficult with everything that the government has on a daily basis, pushing them around, very tough to pin down. The end of the day, it was super though, because the attendance, the ability to see everything from 3D printing to some new products to be used for improvements to actual housing that we're seeing that can be built off-site in the off-site construction components and how it can be financed. That's a big push between what HUD's after. So each year we try to build on that. We're always working when we can get quite a few thousand people through the National Mall like that. And, you learn each time we do it. And the Secretary of HUD's super glad that she was able to come and get there, and all the people that we were able to take through and push through seminars and answer questions and see the products. We'll always keep looking to do those things in conjunction, good science, right?
Yeah, it is good science. Well, yeah, we love BSI. I mean, building systems, building science. It has so many great things. And if you're unhappy or with something else, it could BS everything, right? What the heck? But as all of this is looming, one of the things I wanted to say, Greg, on this recession or not recession, depression, Great Depression, we'll get into some other comments here in a second, but it has always been good for the offsite industry when this happens. We tend to get traction. We grow more. It forces people to look harder. Obviously, when we have recessions or depressions, a lot of people leave the industry, which is going to make this labor shortage even worse if that does happen without new technology like offsite construction coming into the mix. You have 2 cents on that?
Yeah, I agree with you totally, because I think that that's one of the things that we look at, and it just goes back to the basics. When you are able to say we're going to start looking at bringing people into controlled environments and producing things at a much quicker pace than you can otherwise get done, you hate to ever look at a recession as being a good thing. That was what we were talking about earlier. But at the same time, you do look at any situation as being the best opportunity you can make it. And for offsite construction and for building systems, there's no question, as you said, this is a great spot to double down on some of these ideas. You look at a number of people on this call, even what they bring to the marketplace and what they have to offer, and just see how it can better fit in and how we can get it in more individual companies' hands moving forward.
Yeah, for sure. Greg, this has been awesome. I got a couple announcements. Wednesday, July 20th. That would be this Wednesday, everybody. We have Wolf Industries coming on in the tiny house movement. You do not want to miss it. It's going to be a big event. And then Friday, BS Friday, that Greg keeps alluding to with Mark Barenaked Willie on the 22nd. We have Lori Rand, and we're going to learn about Habit Studio and the Recover Initiative on BS Friday. So you definitely want to tune in for that. Here is the last comment that I'm going to read out loud before we end our show. Greg, you got to be ready for this one. This is going to have to make you think a little bit. You're going to have to put on your hunting. You're going to have to put on your hunting outfit for this one. You ready?
Okay.
All right. Things we know: interest rates follow inflation. The markets are in free fall. U.S. quantitative easing has been unstable for a long time. There'll be a recession, probably a depression. The demand for affordable housing will worsen. My main question for Greg is, which ghillie suit manufacturer would he recommend?
That was a trick. I was like digging deep.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if you're into ghillie suits. If you're crawling around in Connecticut up there, who knows? That's how Greg checks on what's happening in the job sites. He has ghillie suits he runs around in.
That's right. I always like Every's questions. That was good. That was very good. But well said. The first part of that was well reasoned and exactly what we're looking at here.
Did we miss anything, Greg? Is there anything I did not touch on with you? Anything that you want to put out there?
I think that covered it. I think that you're doing a good job introducing some of these topics from time to time. But what we'll do too is, we do this monthly, and we'll keep everybody up to speed and get up to the minute stats next time we're on too. It's helpful. You don't have to live your life by stats and a lot of these things, but it is helpful to have accurate information.
It is, and we're lucky to have the voice, one of the voices, I should say, in Washington, D.C. in the industry. You're tied into really what's happening, so it's great to hear it firsthand versus what you read in the papers everywhere. So we appreciate you coming on, Greg. Thank you, and we look forward to next month's get together as well. All right, everybody, listen, hit that like and share one last time. If you're not following Greg Ugalde, you need to follow Greg Ugalde. If you are in Connecticut, remember, Greg is a builder. And if you are in Connecticut, you want to go by the Central Builders Association there and visit Greg because, you're doing all kinds of wonderful things. Isn't there just real quick, isn't there a parade of homes coming up there somewhere sometime soon?
We're looking at the fall because it's always helpful. We have our big awards and things that we just had our large Bill Pack fundraiser, and it's the largest in Connecticut.
It drives me nuts.
Like Connecticut, it's the largest event around the country each year, and we just had it this past week, and it was a great success. It's where the pros have the tournament 2 weeks ago, and then we have our thing, so everybody loves it.
Yeah, well, it is a great association. I have been there. That is where we originally met for the first time years ago. Right. All right, everybody. Listen, that is a wrap. Henry and everybody else that joined us today, thank you so much for watching. There were some messages I was told that were not coming through to our system from LinkedIn. So if we missed something, I do apologize.
We'll get 'em.
It was not intentional. Other than that, we will see you this Wednesday. Wolf Industries, Derek Hugel, you want to be here for this. They are making big moves in the tiny house movement. Greg Ugalde, stay right there. Everybody else, enjoy your Monday, first day of the week. Let's have fun. And let's build it better. I'll see you next time.
See you.